Fetcher's Pet Supply on the north side of the Charleston Square, serving the EIU community since 1991. Fetcher's welcomes all pets on a leash, is open 7 days a week, and offers made in the USA food. Pet supplies for dogs, cats, reptiles, and fish. Fetcher's Pet Supply in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Good evening. July 20th is a day many of us here at WEIU will remember. We were introduced to Lieutenant Aaron Landers from the University of Illinois Police Department and his canine buddy, Winston. Everyone here gushed over Winston, and Lieutenant Landers commented, well, he gets that a lot. August 23rd was another day we'll remember, and it took us all by surprise. We learned Lieutenant Landers passed away from injuries sustained in a vehicle versus motorcycle crash. After consulting with his department, the UIPD gave us their support to air this episode on its community outreach and support team, a team led by Lieutenant Landers. It was a role Aaron was passionate about filling. So tonight, we bring you that episode as a tribute to Lieutenant Landers, his buddy Winston, the Landers family, and the University of Illinois Police Department. Rest in peace, Lieutenant Landers, and thank you for your service to this community. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Paw Report. And fitting that the title of our show is the Paw Report, we've got a few paws joining us in studio today. We'd like to thank Lieutenant Aaron Landers and Winston, our buddy, for joining us for this episode. Lieutenant Landers is from the University of Illinois Police Department. So thank you for traveling south a little bit with your canine companion to join us for this episode.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Well, you're a first-time guest. I always put them on the spot. Tell us about you and your journey into law enforcement.
So I was born in Charleston, Illinois, believe it or not, in a little place right off the road here. I grew up in Effingham for the most part, and then I moved to St. Joseph, Illinois. Graduated from St. Joseph High School, then entered the military, was in the Air Force, went to Desert Storm, came back, joined the U of I Police Department in 1997, and have been there ever since.
And today we're talking about a special program that your department is involved with. It's the Canine Companion group. So when and why did the University of Illinois Police Department decide to start a pet companion therapy program, comfort program? Yes.
So our chief Alice Carey, she came from Baltimore, University of Maryland in Baltimore, and they had a program similar to this where she received a dog from Paws and Stripes, a program down in South Florida in Brevard County. And she brought that whole program from her police department there. She started it here. It paid off really good for them as far as contact with community, and we are introducing them into our REACH program, which is our mental health evaluation program. And so it is really a good fit for us, and we started, once we started getting dogs and getting them out in the community, found out they were just a fantastic tool for us.
You mentioned Paws and Stripes. Can you give us a little background on that organization?
Sure. So Paws and Stripes was a program. It is a partnership between their jail community and a local trainer. They take shelter dogs that would normally be either euthanized or adopted. And once they test the dogs, they figure out which dogs are going to be functional. They test them to make sure they're not going to be, as we say, bitey, they're not violent, they don't get agitated too easy. Then they are then rolled into this program. Inmates learn a skill by training them, caring for them, grooming them, all of that, and then eventually they go to the police departments, and then we use them as our Comfort Canine dogs. The program started initially as a program for veterans. Veterans who needed extra help because of PTSD and those kinds of problems. They found that the dogs were really good for that. One of the deputies who went through the program just took one of the dogs out to a child advocacy center, a place where police officers do interviews with children who have been abused or have other problems, and found that they had about a 43% disclosure rate. As you can imagine, it's a really difficult thing to get a child to talk about things as tough as abuse. And they found that about a 43% disclosure rate. They introduced the dogs from the Paws and Stripes program, no other changes. They didn't change how they interviewed or anything else, just put the dogs in, and it went up to about an 83% disclosure rate. And so that's kind of started that partnership with the police departments and Comfort Canines, and we use them for all kinds of different stuff. So,
how many dogs are utilized within the University of Illinois Police Department?
So currently we have 4. So I said before, Alice Carey, she came with Archie, and then we have Alex Tran, who has Lollipop. I'm not going to talk about the breeds because they're all pretty much all Americans for the most part. Lollipop is, I'm not really even sure what Lollipop is. And then Rosie is more like a silky terrier, and she's partnered with Officer Mitru.
And then there's old Winston, who's
a
lab
Winston,
who's 100 pounds plus of love and lick, so that's a good thing. And generally speaking, when you get the dogs, what are they going to be doing?
So we have a lot of stuff that they're doing right now. So initially, they are partnered with the 2 officers that I had talked about, Mitru and Tran, are behavioral health detectives. And there's a new thing that we're trying out called the co-responder model. We're putting social workers with police officers to handle CIT or crisis intervention calls. And so the dogs are going to be another part of that response. They're going to be with the officers to respond to crisis calls. At any time, suicidal subjects, excited delirium, those kinds of things where police officers generally need help with social work kind of things. And the dogs are an added layer of that. So they're going to be riding around with the police officers to handle those kind of CIT calls. But the truth is, they are a huge tool in just about everything that we do. Winston is mainly focused on community relations. He goes out and does.
He'd be a good ambassador.
Yeah, he's met most of the sports teams at the U of I.
Aww.
He has been pretty good about going. Thank you very much, Winston. Giving us, you guys, a different profile.
Yeah.
They're also members of the COPS response, concerns for officer. I can't even remember what COPS stands for at the moment, but we handle funeral details. So when officers are killed in line of duty or lose their lives in line of duty, they go to the in line of duty funerals and help out with, as you can imagine, they're a pretty sad situation. So they're there to kind of give comfort and a little bit of help for those. Lollipop has been responsible for giving some comfort for 2 different fires because Alex Tran is a volunteer fireman too. So anytime there is a fire that he responds to, he tends to bring her with him to those. And so if you can imagine, if there's a fire, that's a pretty sad kind of a situation, and they kind of help out with those too. So,
how are the dogs? And maybe you can speak for Winston specifically. How are the dogs paired with like yourself? I mean, there has to be some sort of bond, connection. I mean, you just don't walk into a room and say, okay, that's where I'm going with that dog. I mean, it's very obvious that the 2 of you click.
Yeah. He follows me almost creepily. There are times where I will turn around and he's just staring at me.
You were a creep.
He's definitely an interesting character, but for the most part, when you go down to Paws and Stripes, they have picked the dog out for you. And once you get down there, there's a couple of hours of just interacting. Now, if there was some kind of, well, this is not working out, then that would be the time where, all right, maybe we need to select another dog. And there's usually a couple of extra dogs there in case 1 or 2 just does not match. He is a pretty unique case in that he was supposed to go to Palm Beach. Poor dog, he ends up having to go to Illinois in the middle of December.
You were going to the beach, and now you ended up in the cornfields.
He was really happy to see me until we landed here and it was snow on the ground. He's like, all right, maybe this is probably a terrible idea. But yeah, there has to be that connection initially. There was not a connection with his who he was supposed to go to, and so I wasn't actually supposed to get a dog. I was just going to observe the program, kind of get an idea on how it's run. And because she dropped out, he was already end of his, they can only keep them for 3 months, and then they have to go back to the shelter. And so he had already run that course, and he was already going to have to go back to the shelter. Well, the Winston's case, he was already a service dog before he was a Paws and Stripes dog. And so he was more trained at a higher level than the other dogs. And so it had really been, it would have been a travesty if he would have gone back to the shelter. So luckily for me, I happened to be at the right place at the right time. They brought him out. We walked around for about a minute or two, and it was instant. And he has been...
You're going to Illinois, Winston.
Yeah, he's been my buddy ever since. Like I said, it becomes kind of creepy sometimes. He's staring at me.
Well, those eyes, I mean, they're just killer eyes. They just look at you and your heart melts. Yeah, Lieutenant, how common is it for therapy dogs to be utilized within police departments?
It is becoming a huge deal, but it is pretty rare right now. There's only that I know of right now, there's about 4 or 5 places in the state of Illinois that have Comfort Canines. I presented at the CIT conference. I've had a whole bunch of people reach out to me afterwards, so it is catching on, but it is pretty rare right now. If you were to go to, say, Florida, where this kind of program started, it's a lot more common. And in fact, in Florida, the dogs are allowed to testify in that they get to sit in a courtroom where a child is testifying in court, and they're allowed to actually be there with the kids when they testify, with a handler kind of down there with them. So we are trying really hard to get them to be as common as drug dogs and EOD dogs, just because of the benefits are so much more important.
Were they welcomed into your department? I'm sure with the new chief, she brings along a dog that's a Comfort Canine. Was there a little, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Cops are like anybody else. You introduce something new like that, and I will tell you, it was a little bit of why are we getting these dogs, and how are they going to be helpful? And but I will tell you, right off the bat, as soon as they started to prove how useful they are, and to be honest with you, for us, letting a dog wander around through the halls of a police department, rendering comfort for our officers, is an added benefit to that. And so once people figured out, hey, wait a minute, this is a pretty nice day to be able to hang out at work, and if you're feeling bad, something is getting to you, had a tough call, there's a dog that kind of wanders up and licks your face, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit better. So, that I would say they weren't resistant to it, but more of, we'll see about that. But now they are very much embraced.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, your occupation is very stressful, especially these days. So having somebody in the hallway that you can pet and have a little stress relief with is a positive thing. Let's say there's a department out there that's considering this, not sure about this. What kind of advice can you give to them, like this would be the right decision to make?
I would say that you reach out to us, quite honestly, and we will. We've got pretty much a packet that we can send out at some point to let you know where they would fit into your whole scheme of things. But I will tell you, if you're thinking about it, if a department is thinking about it, I would encourage them to really explore it. There are some problems right now in the state of Illinois, the legislature, and how the laws are written. It is a little bit more difficult in that if you have a dog, you have to have a special car, and you have to have a special system in that car, and so they can be very expensive because of that. And we're going to probably try to work to get that changed because, for instance, Rosie is yay big. She does not need a giant kennel
SUV
in the back,
with
air conditioning and all that when she literally can sit on a seat. But because the law is written that way, it does take some time to change that. So I would encourage police departments across the state to really look at it. If you're a tiny department, then at least maybe get together with another department and have kind of a shared kind of a system. ISU has a dog that's not assigned to one officer, it's assigned to the department. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do this program, but the benefits are, regardless, are very, very beneficial. Something that I would also suggest, there are a lot of places now that are kind of coming up with these comfort dog programs as far as training, but you should really stick to the companies that you know are going to be good. Paws and Stripes, obviously I came from that school, so I'm kind of set on that one. But there are a lot of places that say, yeah, we're training comfort dogs, but the Paws and Stripes has a really long history, so they're pretty established. The dogs are free, the training is free. All you have to do is show up there. And so, pay for room and board while you're there. So they're pretty economical. They're not like a drug dog or a bomb dog where they're pretty darn expensive just purchasing them. So, and once you get one, or once you are thinking about getting one, don't be set on what kind of dog you want, because
well, you said they're all American.
You get whatever dog they give you.
You may not get a Winston that's
No.
full on lab, but
one of my favorite stories, there was an officer from up north who was a really big, kind of a stout SWAT kind of a guy, and he comes in, and he's a pretty good. He's I can't wait to see my dog, and he got a Boston Terrier, and it's literally that big, and you could just see him
as big as his arm.
You could see him just drop, and about maybe 2 hours later, he's on his shoulder, and they're feeding each other, and it was adorable. But just don't be judgmental on the kind of dog you get, because you never know.
Do you find that other departments or have they called on you to kind of come in and a crisis situation or a situation like a fire or any other situation to ask for your assistance? Have you partnered with other?
We've started to see that, yeah. And Lollipop was one of our first ones that kind of had that. One of our police departments in the Champaign-Urbana area, they had a subject on a bus who had a knife, holding himself essentially hostage, but he was really not getting with the program, and he wasn't wanting to give up. And so as they were talking very relatively soon into the whole negotiations, they asked, hey, do you like dogs? And the subject was like, oh yeah, I really like dogs. If I can get a dog here, would you put down the knife? Oh yeah, absolutely. And so they called Lollipop in. Lollipop shows up, and he puts the knife down. They take him into custody, make sure that he's safe, and then let Lollipop do her magic. And all of a sudden, it was. So we're becoming known for that kind of stuff, and so they are really. It's an interesting situation.
Lieutenant, do you find that there is a particular time of year when the dogs are needed more than other times of the year? Let's say, for instance, when final exams roll around, maybe at the university, and there is a lot of, there's stress that come along with that. Do you, or maybe the holidays? I don't know. Do you find that?
Yeah, so you're very astute. That's exactly when we're seeing more calls for the dogs. Obviously, holidays are a pretty depressing time for some people. We see right around finals, as you said, and graduation, because a lot of people are, they think maybe they're going to graduate and then they're not quite graduating. Right. So, we can kind of plot that there are going to be times that they're going to be a lot more used, and those are those kinds of times.
What about, you mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, community outreach, and that is a big part of it too. You visit a lot of community groups, give a lot of speeches of sorts. Talk about that aspect of the comfort dogs.
Sure. So again, they are such a good tool in those kinds of situations. Police officers, right now, obviously, it's hard for us to get in and talk to people because there is a bit of a stigma and there is a bit of a pushing away from law enforcement. But it's really hard to push away from a Winston. And so we have found that a couple of times where we went into places where we wouldn't ordinarily get into because, you're police officers, you have guns, please stay away kind of a thing. Just having a dog around you know, it loosens that up a little bit, and then we find that people are more apt to be able to just have a human conversation. It's hard to be agitated, I think, whenever you're around a dog. They've got a bit of a magical sense to them.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about Winston. You mentioned he's probably visited about all of the sports teams at the University of Illinois. Does he go into practice? Does he go into the locker rooms?
Well, we try to stay away from that, but yeah. So we've had some arranged meetings with the volleyball team, the women's basketball team, soccer team, and softball team, and gymnastics and other things. So we would arrange for that meeting initially, just so that everybody got a chance to meet the dogs, kind of get the idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then essentially they're invited to our house. We aren't at the police department, we're right across the street in a historical site house. And they're invited to come over anytime they want to and hang out with Winston or whatever dog happens to be there at the time. So
when you get calls to your department and the situation is defined, do you know immediately what dog is going to fit the right scenario? Or do you just who's ever there and whoever can go, that's who's heading out?
Yep. It's essentially whatever dog is available. And right now, because there's only 4 of us, it's not a 24-hour coverage, so we cover what we can. There's an officer, obviously me on day shift, and the second shift and the third shift. But we have rotating days and different days off schedules, so there's times where they're not available. But whatever dog happens to be there at the time, I trust all 4 of the dogs to give you the kind of service you need, regardless of what time of day it is. So.
Do you have to do continual training?
We do ongoing obedience training because that's really the most important thing for them. But they don't have a specific job for, you need to smell this or you need to track this. That's not what they do. The best thing for us is just getting them out into public. They do kind of get a little rusty if they are sitting at home a lot and they're not interacting with big groups and big crowds. It's not really natural for dogs to be out in huge crowds or, kids coming up and poking on them and that kind of stuff. So the more you get them accustomed to that and they get kind of reintroduced to that, it's a lot better. So there are some ongoing obedience training that we try to do on a daily basis, just to sit and heel and those kinds of things. We do try to take them out in the public, go to a hardware store or something, or a grocery store, and have them wander through a little bit just to get them accustomed to being out in the public. But other than that, they are pretty much effortless.
What about the department adding any more pups to the patrol? Are they looking to do that? As we were talking kind of off camera before our discussion, and you said, boy, we'd like to have as many as
absolutely.
We can.
I would say, right now we're pretty good at 4 for now, but as the program expands and as they get to be more popular and as we find more uses for them, we would love to have as many as we possibly can. But if you probably know that there is a police shortage at the moment, and so it does take a little bit away from patrol whenever you're assigning them a dog, and there's so many things that we're trying to get these dogs to do that, really right now it's manpower and vehicles that is holding us back. But if you've asked me, we would have every officer would have a dog because they are that useful.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next question is, what gives you the most joy about working with Winston, not only professionally, but personally as well?
Well, it's, it can be a very stressful job, and there are days where, just like anybody else, I come to work and I'm like, well, I just really don't want to be here. But it's always a good thing to have a dog to kind of rub your head, and you're like, all right, maybe I don't feel so bad. But also, so I've brought him to the Boys and Girls Club in Champaign-Urbana, and just seeing, literally we walk in the door and it is no holds barred. It is absolutely out of control, and the people are trying, okay, hold on, calm down, but just seeing the reactions that the kids have to having the dog in there and being able to play with him, and I can trust that I know that he's not going to do anything terrible to the kids. It is really, really rewarding to at least give people an alternative view to police and who we are and what we do. and having the opportunity to kind of brighten some kids' faces on a daily basis when we go in there. So it is just a really great job.
Well, I have to ask, are you okay with the fact that most of the time you're chopped liver when you're around Winston? Because he's a magnet, I'll tell you.
It has, it's taken a little getting used to that.
Your ego's a little.
Yeah, you have to lose that immediately. And the other dog officers, the other canine officer told me the same thing, that just wait, eventually you're going to get to that point where you are going to be fading. Nobody knows your name. There are websites with Winston on it. Everybody, he participated in a couple of funerals, unfortunately, the last couple of months. And I would walk into a room and people would say, Winston! And I don't think 80% of the people even know who I am, even to this day. And I could feel sad about it, but the truth is,
You've done your job too.
He's doing what he's supposed to do. And I'm just kind of I'm his handler and his chauffeur pretty much, so, and I'm okay with that.
Well, we appreciate you chauffeuring Winston to Charleston to speak with us about the canine program, the therapy program that the University of Illinois Police Department is taking part in right now. And I do hope that maybe some other departments out there have been watching this episode and will reach out to you for maybe some advice and guidance and get one started on their own.
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Landers, thank you for joining us. And Winston, you know what? I'd take you home if I could, but I think you got to go back to work. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we thank you, our viewers, for joining us for this episode of the Paul Report. Until next time, Winston and I say we'll see you then.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Power Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
The Paul Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Fetcher's Pet Supply on the north side of the Charleston Square, serving the EIU community since 1991. Fetcher's welcomes all pets on a leash, is open 7 days a week, and offers made in the USA food. Pet supplies for dogs, cats, reptiles, and fish. Fetcher's Pet Supply in Charleston.